really read. Yeah,
Avengers comic. Okay.
I never really read any of them, so I don't really know. I think that was purely based on like aesthetics,
I think
and
part of the
also X
charm.
Men were X Men. I
I'm
don't know.
on. I'm only on issue 88, right? So,
Yeah,
but I think the charm of it is the weird changing lineups and people just randomly popping in and out.
yeah. I mean, I think X Men were what their X Men were conceived like what 20 years after the Avengers, so it's kind of
No,
like
like
No, it's
a
no
year or
63.
two.
10.
Yeah.
63.
Okay, well that makes sense.
I think as a like they became prominent in pop culture 20 years after the Avengers, but
Yeah,
they were running as almost as long.
But doing the reads, and I've read the classic X-Men run a few times. I'm like, when I was a kid, I was like, oh, it's not written by Stan Lee anymore. That's crap. And I'm like, Roy Thomas is a much better writer than Stan
Yeah,
Lee.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
like as an adult.
Holy hell.
And I got a weird space with Kirby. I think because Kirby's great, but it always looks like old timey. You always feel like you're reading an old comic when you're reading something that Kirby drew.
it's really interesting to me, like reading Kirby stuff because it like you said, it feels like he's sort of the futuristic guy from the 40s or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
It is, but it's kind of cool in its own thing.
Well, it's very cool. Like if you're gonna make like, put a poster on your wall, you want the Kirby, you want Lacteus Kirby or something, or the new gods or whatever it was from the early 70s.
He's like the Jodorowsky's Dune of comic writers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I think I've decided that I'm going to say that I like Jodorowsky's Dune
The
because
one
you
that doesn't
guys,
exist.
yeah, you guys like the Lynch and the Villeneuve and Dune, but I'm just going to say, just like claim that one, the one that can't be made.
Yeah, Dune still doesn't
The
come
one
out
that would be bad if it was
Yeah,
actually
it
made.
probably would be bad,
Yeah, it would
but
be terrible.
yeah, if he even could get like if there's any chance in hell he could get like Salvador Dali and Orson Welles to show up and perform, which is like impossible. Anyway, I mean, even when they were alive, when they were alive specifically, no
Mm.
way,
Do you
no
want
way.
do you want um Orson Welles with Baron
Yeah.
Harkonnen or as the Sandworm?
I mean, I think what was he supposed to be?
The Sandworm.
No, no, what was he supposed to be?
I would think the Baron, but I don't know. That
Yeah.
I
would make the
sure. I
most
mean, he could
sense.
be the sandworm. He could be both. He could
Mm.
be like,
Yeah. So okay, like Jodorowsky, a guy who doesn't care about like plot or coherent narrative, was going to tell Orson Welles to sit in a makeup chair for 6 hours and
yeah,
also like give direction to Salvador Dali. Get out of here.
and
That would
and
have
get like what
never happened.
five huge bands to do all the soundtrack,
Yeah,
where each
no
one would
way.
have a full soundtrack for each planet or whatever. But that movie got me listening to Magma, so that's cool.
Mm. And we kind of got Alien out of it, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, a
true.
lot
Yeah,
of
we
the
got Alien out of it, which is basically perfect. So really, who
yeah.
cares? We got a good documentary out.
Maybe
Yeah,
Marcos.
I love that like it went that creative team that Jodorowsky put together would later work with Ridley Scott, and I don't think you could have like a more diametrically opposed pair of directors because Ridley Scott is like, we're professionals, we're gonna make this movie, and we're gonna do it again the next year, and I'm gonna do that for the next 50 years. And Jodorowsky's like, I'm gonna make 6 movies in my entire life, and they're all gonna be incomprehensible.
Well, in his defense, I think the last Jodorowsky movie was relatively pretty close to as coherent as House of Gucci.
Mhm. Okay,
That's a weird
sure.
backhanded compliment. This
No, he did a two-part biographical film. I only watched the
Yeah, yeah,
first
yeah,
part. I did enjoy it a lot, actually. It was kind of fun.
sure.
maybe I was saying
I,
this
I bet
yesterday
it was
too,
better
but
than Napoleon, which I did not like.
oh,
Didn't see
movie or
Napoleon. I kind
TV
of want
version?
to. He's talking about the movie because Ridley Scott made it.
Yeah, I saw the theatrical one,
Isn't
and like
isn't there a
I'm a
longer cut of that that's
yeah, that's
supposed to be
I
for
don't know if
TV?
that's come out on Apple yet or not, but it's supposed to be like 4 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
And
that I'm
like
looking forward to that, but
yeah,
I
but
I
I
am
mean
kind
the
of
movie cuts out like the entire Spanish campaign, a whole lot of other like really important battles in Napoleon's life, and then it doesn't also cover any of the politics really well. So it tries to do everything and does nothing.
well. Yeah, I want to see it because I'm a pretty big Joaquin Phoenix fan at this point,
Mm,
but like I'm sure it'll be a mess. I mean, there were
yeah,
things I liked a lot about House of Gucci. It was just sort of a thing where I wish it had been weirder. Like it wasn't wacky enough.
yeah. And that's the guy who made
Hmm.
oh fuck.
I'm sitting here having the same thought, by the way.
The the
It's somebody
consultant,
notable.
Hmm.
the
I can move the high and low
the
page on them.
counselor. The counselor, yeah. That movie is insane.
The Counselor?
Yeah.
That rings a bell.
Javier Bardem, Michael Fassbender,
Oh, I like them
uh,
too.
Cameron Diaz, Penelope Cruz, and it's the grimmest movie I've ever seen.
Hmm.
It's written by Cormac McCarthy, and it feels like it's written by Cormac McCarthy.
Oh,
Okay.
2013.
Yeah,
I
it's
feel
it's a
like I've
big man.
never heard of this. Oh no, you know what? I heard something where it was like Cameron Diaz is finally good or something like that. Or I don't mean that sounds mean.
Yeah,
I heard that it
everyone
was
loved her
like
in the
the best
90s.
that she ever. I was like that she did an incredible performance in this or something. Right? Am I getting that right? Like she
Yeah,
was
everybody's good
especially
in it.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
Uh,
just you're just gonna feel bad.
well,
Feel bad
I
movie of the
I
year.
always feel
Yeah,
bad.
Oh, okay. Well, you'll
Not
love it.
true.
yeah.
That's not true.
But you
Sometimes
know
I
how
like
like
feel bad stuff.
you know
I don't
how
know.
like you're sad and you listen to the Cure or Joy Division. It's kind of like cathartic. This movie is not that. You'll just feel worse. And so like, it accomplishes its goal of making you feel worse. But is that good? Is uh
Hmm.
your choice, I guess.
I the last movie that made me feel bad was probably hmm. Well, we haven't talked about it on this podcast yet, but The Fog made me feel bad, the remake of it.
Oh, we'll be getting to that soon. Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't watched it yet.
um, I don't know. Like Lars von Trier makes me feel bad.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Well, that's like saying the sun is yellow.
Um,
I
yeah,
finally put my Blu-ray Apocalypse in here, so I have so many whack movies to watch.
that's not that seems like a reasonable place to put them
Let's see, what do we
all in
have?
one box.
After Earth, Alien versus Predator, Ant-Man the Wasp, The Artist, Assassin's Creed, Attack the Block, Baby Driver. It's such a weird combination here. The
Yeah,
last
you're
Bad
going all
Boys
over the place.
movie. Well, it's just
Hmm.
what looked decent in the, going to hell bin at the rental store.
Attack the Block is great.
Yeah, Attack the
Oh
Block
no,
is
I got
like,
some. There were some great movies in there.
Yeah.
Let's see, go the ends. Nightcrawler. I got all the oceans,
Oh,
oh,
including
wow.
eight.
Nightcrawler
Uh,
rules. Never seen any of the Oceans Skip
Pixar's
12.
War of the Planet of the Apes. Prisoners, the
Hmm.
one that you were suggesting. The
Oh,
Oh,
little.
yeah.
I can't say the guy's name, but yeah, yeah,
Billy,
yeah.
yeah,
So
the Dune
I can
guy.
watch this now, right?
Sweet.
Yeah.
Um,
Denis Villeneuve.
of course, you told me I need to
Oh,
watch this,
sorry.
so but there's like 80
Yeah,
things
that's
in
one of the
here,
best,
so.
my favorite comic book movie ever.
But yeah, yeah. So I got my own little West Coast video here now.
Except you're on the East Coast. Well, you're not on any coast,
Well,
really.
no,
You're
I'm in
in
the
the mountains.
mountains, Mountain Coast video. I'm in Mountain Coast
Yeah.
video. See if
Blockbusteroo.
I think Luke was lying about that five. Oh well.
Well, maybe he was using poetic license.
I assumed it might be a couple extra minutes if he said five.
Uh,
High and
wow.
low, and there's my notes. I do have a summary for this one. I don't think we ever talked about it, but it had my name on
You're
it.
I have the list that has names next to films, so I'm hoping
Yeah,
that that's correct.
yeah. I assume the only person I might need to remind is Luke because I don't know if he looks at that list ever. Oh, John, Mark and I just yesterday we talked about the day after tomorrow into infinity. Are you even familiar with this thing existing? This is a special produced between seasons of Space 1999.
I was totally unaware. Wow.
It's really good. I liked it better than Space 1999.
The reason I'm bringing it up is because I talked to John Champion about it, and he hadn't even heard of it. I was like, wow, if
Wow.
he hasn't heard of it, then this thing is really under the radar. But you can watch it on
Definitely.
YouTube. Yeah, I like the trippiness of 90. There's plenty of trippiness in this too, but
Mhm.
this is more like we're trying to teach you science poorly trippiness as opposed to
Okay.
the just weird metaphysical trippiness of Space
Mm.
1999.
It was, funded by NBC, or not funded, but whatever, greenlit by NBC to teach children things, and then basically was made by these guys who don't understand what they were trying to teach. They do not understand the theory of relativity. That basically the film is like, the theory of relativity means that we can't go past the speed of light, and then they do anyway. They're just like,
Okay,
screw it,
okay.
punch it. We're going to past the speed of light. It's really, I don't know. It was fun.
With the most subdued Brian Blessed you'll ever see.
But
Whoa.
then every time at the end of it, it just freeze frames and E equals MC squared shows up on the screen. So it's like E equals MC squared.
The one thing we
So
know about relativity.
yes, I mean, frankly, I don't know a whole lot more than that. I think I might know more than Jerry Anderson about it, but
Yeah.
I don't know. That's not very much. Uh,
See if I can get an update there. How's it HEP? I could, yeah.
yep, yep.
How's it HEP? Yeah. I don't know if he's having a computer issue or what, but
I have this like open to the Segata Sanshiro page because I didn't understand that Akira Kurosawa's first film was Sugata Sanshiro, which was the inspiration. Do you guys know who Segata Sanshiro? He was like in the Sega Saturn commercials in Japan, and like the way they would have this guy sell the Saturn is kids would be just running around and he'd just show up and be like, "Ooh!" And he'd like break all their legs and then just grab the Saturn and be like, "Sega Saturn!" And then it had a song that would play. It's like
Okay.
well,
fucking
that
he just
sounds
would
like
beat
a
everybody's
Japanese
ass.
commercial.
It's
Yeah, for
awesome.
sure.
It's so good. Like people would just be afraid of him, they'd run away or whatever. This is one where he shows up as Santa and he rips Santa's face off, and they're just like, "Ah."
See, I'm all like, oh yeah, that sounds like what's on TV here.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
still
you can.
commercials here is still like
Consumers
100%.
did run away from the Sega Saturn. As someone
That's
who
true.
owned a Sega Saturn,
I think
I
it
I could
outsold. We went over this in some podcast somewhere, but I think it outsold the Nintendo 64 in Japan, just not
yeah,
here
yeah,
at
yeah.
all. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, it is weird. Like I think the N64 was a out and out failure in Japan,
yeah.
and since then they've done nothing but make like just trounce every other system with every
And
So
release.
the Xbox has never really gotten
Yeah.
any traction in Japan. Like you
yeah,
can
like
find
it's
it, but
it's
it just like
insane,
nobody
isn't it? Like,
cares.
yeah, it's like they've sold like 20,000 of the first one or something like that, like almost none, basically, or not
Yeah.
even that, like 100 or something.
So like
um,
Halo has no presence in Japan.
I
Yeah.
mean, right now Halo has no presence anywhere because people, except for
Whoa,
people
Halo never
bitching
had a
about it.
presence. I'm just thinking about the most Xboxy
Yeah.
game I can think of, but I haven't touched I haven't touched one for more than a decade.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're
For a
going through a
while,
weird. Sorry, we're going through a weird thing right now where people just think Xbox is gonna just stop happening.
Well,
But
consoles have stopped happening at some point.
yeah.
Sega stopped happening, right?
uh, well, it's a weird time because it's like they I guess they didn't they've sold way more PS5s, but then I think the number of PS5 exclusives is like 20 or something. So it's like they just Sony was like it's halfway through its life cycle, so it's
Yeah.
mm,
Oh, while
weird
he's
times.
keying in,
But
Mark, can you look up the number
huh?
for this one? I think it's
Got it.
82.
I
What
got
it
it.
is it 83, 82?
82.
82.
Yeah, look,
But
sorry, computer decided it had to
oh,
update.
all good.
Okay, I guess we should jump right into it then, which 82. 82 is your
Yep, I
82.
price
heard,
point.
I heard. I could hear you even when you couldn't hear me.
Okay.
All right.
And at number 82, it's high and low.
Ah, okay, bringing a bit of your classroom English into the podcast there.
Hi, listeners. Lo, it is us.
The
Hi,
peop
low, Mark. I'm Luke.
Hi, Lo, Luke. I'm Mark.
Hello, everyone. I'm Matt, and coming back uh to this podcast and to several of our podcasts. It's John Arminio, our what is your hook these days? Spiritual leftist film
Yeah.
commentaries. Yeah.
Yeah, if you need to talk about Catholicism or leftism, I'm your boy.
Specific, yeah,
Or
that's such an interesting brew. I guess that's kind of what JFK was supposed to be, though, right?
I guess. Or
Or
yeah,
like the actual biblical Jesus.
yeah.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
the
Yeah.
actual biblical Jesus too. Um,
Or hey, liberation theology, all these
Mhm.
Marxist South Americans talking about communism and getting
Yeah.
assassinated for it.
Not even original European communism, there's a big Christian element.
Mm.
I
um,
Don't tell Marx that.
this
We wouldn't like it very much.
uh this film
Anyway,
was weird to me. It felt like it had something to say about capitalism, but then it just turned into like the Joker.
yeah. Here's I'll give you my viewings. So I think we said before one thing about this podcast is we're hitting the non Jedi Kurosawa films, you know,
mm.
Which
because
apparently is all we have. I don't think there are any of his. I
Seven
think this is the
Samurai somewhere
last.
on. We gotta have Seven Samurai on the list, don't we?
I
I
mean,
don't
I
know.
think there was at least one of the actual samurai ones.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, this
Oh, it
this is
is.
the
Oh, it
his
is on there.
last
Okay.
his last major non-historical film. He had a couple like after this like the Dodeskiden, but this is like the last major contemporary Japanese film that he made.
but
But
yeah, when I was looking at watching, getting into Kurosawa as my film dork phase as a
Mm.
upper teenager, obviously you are kind of like, oh, I want to see those. I want to see Mifune,
Yeah.
with a sword in his
Yeah.
hand and not with a
Hmm.
old school telephone in his hand.
it
Uh,
it is criminal that like Yojimbo and Sanjuro aren't on here. That is and I could just name a bunch of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
But
like when you're making lists of the best movies ever made, Akira Kurosawa, I think if you're serious about movies, he has to be in like the top three or top five at least of like the best directors ever. So he's gonna have a huge presence on your like 100 greatest movies ever list, but do you need more than like six or something? Like how many of his movies can you conceivably have on there? And that's why like and list of empirical data when it comes to movies, it's difficult to reckon with because yeah, like for me, if I'm listing my 100 favorite movies, I'm sure there'll be a ton of Akira Kurosawa, but that eclipses the work of so many other directors, unfortunately.
I mean, if this list encompassed everything over seven, then it would include almost all of his films. So that's not something we can say for a lot of other directors.
Yeah.
But I didn't I didn't mean to come at this movie. I think it's really cool that it turns into the Joker. Like I think it's a better Joker movie than the Joker movie. I think it's a better Batman movie than a lot of Batman movies. Probably possibly all of them. Like you could just put Batman in there. Like he doesn't have to do anything. You just imagine he's there.
Well, he doesn't do anything in the Batman.
Yeah. So it's the
Yeah.
same thing. He's you could just pretend that one of the detectives is Batman, but he's just not dressed up as Batman at the moment.
hasn't gotten a cool costume yet. No, for me, so my point I was getting at is I'd never seen this movie before. I watched it in two chunks. I put it on 2 nights ago. It's a 2 hour, 23 minute running time. I'm like, oh my God. I watched the first 40 minutes, which is like all in a room. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God. And then I come back, I'm like, oh, I still have like 1 hour 45 of this. But then that was great.
Yeah.
When I came back to the movie after that 45 minute mark, that's like right where the movie starts to like get a little propulsion. So, as a whole, I guess it's okay we have those first 40 minutes. It's one of those like you're watching a movie and you like don't know where it's going. So
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, for
Yeah, it's
sure. I
probably
thought
a film that actually watches better the second time.
yeah, I would agree. I thought it was gonna be about like shoe takeovers. Like I was like, this is gonna be like shoe like corporate shoe murder or whatever. I was like so
The Oni
surprised
wears
that the shoe
Prada.
guys. Yeah, I was
there's a
so
lot of
surprised the
soul in
shoe
that kind of
guys
story.
were not involved. Yeah. I was like, what the hell is going
I
on?
only said that because no one can hit me because we're on Zoom.
I bet you're really proud of that joke.
I am. I'm gonna make a t-shirt with that on it.
Oh, yeah.
I
But
didn't
I
hear what you
think
said. Do not
like
repeat it.
the whole the whole corporatism of this film, I think is so integral to like the reason why the kidnapping is happening. Like it is adapted from a Ned McBain novel that was published in '59. and it's so for anybody who doesn't know it there, the High and Low is about this shoe executive with the magnificent name Kingo Gondo. Um, he's trying to manipulate the corporate board to take over like majority stock so he can force his corporate agenda into the boardroom, and they're all about like quick um disposable fashion, and he wants a quality product. But as that's happening, um a kidnapper thinking he's kidnapping King Ogando's son kidnaps his chauffeur's son, but still asks for 30 million yen in ransom. And so it's all about the morality of, does Gondo pay the ransom for his chauffeur who can't possibly pay for it, or does he kind of let the kid die? But in the Ed McBain novel, that character is a much more conventional hero. Like, he just sort of forces his way into the corporate boardroom. He wins. He even gets a couple like knocks into the kidnappers, and the kidnappers are just kind of like unremarkable criminals. Whereas in the Kurosawa version, it's a big indictment of the wealth disparity that is going on as Japan's economic boom is happening, like 15 years after World War II, and how instead of democratizing wealth and economic prosperity, it has just made the rich richer and the poor poor. So the wealth disparity is the cause of all of this rage and anger at the corporate class, who is literally sitting on the top of a hill, uh, where with the windows closed in their sumptuous air conditioning during the heat of the summer, while the rest of Yokohama swelters in the heat, and that simmering rage is what leads to the kidnapping in the first place. And so that criticism of corporate culture and prioritization of economic prosperity over moral prosperity is something that Kurosawa would return to again and again in his movies, and remained a theme from the end of World War II up throughout his career.
It's interesting for two reasons. Today, Japan is actually a world leader in so gender-wise, it has a terrible pay gap. But I mean, in terms of the highest and lowest in a company, the like wealth disparity is actually a world leader. But this is set, like you said, just after the war, where the class system that existed was basically a holdover from the samurai times that Kurosawa usually makes films about, where the daibutsus, the big corporations, were basically wealthy samurai and merchant families couldn't be samurai anymore, so they made these like big conglomerate companies, and they were eventually broken up in sort of antitrust things, but they basically split into five companies with the same name that still share, and they're just technically separate. Like Mitsubishi, the car company, and Mitsubishi, the pencil company, and Mitsubishi, the whatever company. It's basically still the same company, even though on paper it's not. So to me, it really rung true as a Brit because it felt more like old school class divides rather than sort of modern, like New York, Wall Street kind of richness.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because it does really straddle the line, and I think because it's Kurosawa, he's able to play both ends of that, because he is so used to making movies about like classical class disparities, like with Seven Samurai or Hidden Fortress, where we have the collision of the high and low. So yeah, the original title of this film was Heaven and Hell, and you see that in like later scenes where they're like in the dope alleys that are, yeah, they're about as close to hell as you can get, and that contrasts with the Gondo residence, which is just infused with Western luxury.
But High
and
and
that
Low is such a great title because when I
yeah.
first started the film, I thought it was called that because they're searching high and low for a missing child, and then realized more and more meanings on the title as it went on.
Mhm.
The
I thought
Japanese
it was gonna
title
be like
actually is Tengoku no Jigoku, which is heaven and hell. So in Japanese, it actually
yeah.
did keep that title, just to throw that out there.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be like that. Do you buy shoe stock at high and then you sell it low and then you oh wait, the other
Nice.
way.
Yeah.
I
That
thought it
would
was
be
gonna be
terrible business.
That might not have made the 100
Stick
list.
to the
what
communism, better.
the murderer is just like I bought $30 million worth of stock and I sold it low.
That's some real
Yeah,
Joker energy.
I did see in the notes that in the original ending of the book that Gondo takes over National Shoes, which I think
Yeah.
would be a terrible ending. I think
Yeah.
the ending is great because his life is kind of in chaos and people kind of care, but but also you get that little speech from the guy at the end, which is very interesting and not too long, which apparently that was much longer and Kurosawa just cut a bunch of it.
You know,
Which I think is a good choice.
this is a case of a filmmaker taking a book like Starship Troopers or with Robert Aldrich and Kiss Me Deadly, where he found the subject matter repulsive and just flipped the entire morality of the source material and like criticized it because the Ed McBain novel is really about the triumph of like American capitalism, whereas this is a real heavy critique on how Western style capitalism is poisoning Japanese society. So I enjoy that aspect of it quite a bit.
And
The
I really felt like it was kind of a light touch, which I think was better because
Yeah, yeah.
everybody once in a while was just like, yeah, I can't stand this guy. His house pisses me off too. But just like in passing, or like I met with all these shoe executives and they're all the worst people I've ever met. But it's not
Yeah.
I feel like
Well,
I wanted it to hammer more than it did, which is probably a sign that it was
Yeah,
a
then you
better.
might want to watch The Bad Sleep Well, which is a much more
Okay.
direct attack
Noted.
at the corporate culture.
well,
Okay.
Gondo himself was like within the world of corporate people, he was less like egregious because his whole
Mhm.
point was,
Yeah.
I don't want to make cheap shit that's going to break.
Yeah.
Like Japanese companies do still kind of pride themselves on, right? Like the whole,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
that
up
was the
until the
post-war
Well,
Joy-Cons,
boom.
there was the whole
well,
thing
yeah.
with
I was
Nintendo.
gonna say I'm
Their stuff
looking
could
directly
be
at my
hit with a
Switch.
grenade.
I'm looking directly at my Switch. Has screws falling out of it because it's not the best. Whatever, it's fine.
Still better put together than a lot of other stuff.
It works. It still
It
works
doesn't die
after.
after a year like a smartphone.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I've had it for 6 years and it still works. Yeah, good job.
I'll
You
throw
did.
one thing out though. This is a little bit of guitar dorky stuff, but I do find Japanese guitars when I play them, they're always well built and they always seem to be weirdly lifeless.
Yeah, I felt the same thing whenever I watch Japanese football teams. They have great teamwork and they're passing the ball constantly, and no one ever shoots.
The
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Honda Civic of sports teams and musical instruments.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love a Honda Civic. You
For
can't
shoes,
can't
that's
afford those.
fine. I don't
I was
Yeah,
need
gonna
for
say
logo
sure.
in my
Yeah.
that
shoes, but
probably like
I drive a Honda Civic, so
that
Yeah,
is a
what I
please.
better
want.
way to like actually run a society. But we're used to, the Western culture of, we love the arrogant guy who goes out on his own and
Mm.
wins. But
Yeah,
that's
but
maybe not
becomes a
actually good.
monster in the
and
end.
well also, yeah, he does kind of have to do a hostile takeover and like what is the real end result of that? It's like we don't
Well, I
really know
was
what's gonna
so
happen.
surprised that the kidnapping actually did turn out to be unrelated to his business dealings.
Yeah, me too. That was the most shocking thing in the film. It was like
Yeah, it was
these
just an
guys.
unfortunate coincidence.
Um,
But that's interesting because I think as an aside, when they're getting kicked out of his house, they're like, I know what to do about this guy. Like one of them is basically acting like he's gonna do something, and what he was gonna do is just have his secretary rat him out, I guess.
Yeah.
Luke, you can refute this or go along with it. I'm kind of curious what you're going to do. When we watched Ikiru, I mean, it felt a little bit like today's Japan, but everything did look old. Whereas this is the build up to the Tokyo Olympics. They're building the high speed rails, and I was like, I felt like this is barely indistinguishable from just the street scene of modern Japan, to the point where I'm annoyed by if you had a bell most days in some chimey place.
Um, Visually, yes. Vibes wise, it was a little outdated, I think, compared to modern Japan.
Yeah, I was going kind of visually. I actually got on Google Earth for like 30 minutes last night because when when they're when Shinichi's showing them where he thinks the house might be, I was like, I'm pretty sure I drove there like 5 years ago. And I figured out it was actually 50 kilometers north of where I was driving, which was Atami. They're taking the train to Atami earlier in the movie. Excuse me. I did realize Endoshima is the island they show on the TV news for weather all the time when they're trying to show like how rough the
Oh,
sea is.
wow.
They always
It's
show
the
that. So
it's
Nice.
the Ring Island, right?
the one that just has the little thing
The
and
one where they say like, oh, it's you can see such and such island. I'm pretty sure that was
yeah, that's
the
Endoshima,
island from the
right.
Ring.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's on the news like every day, which I'm like, that's
Yeah,
they
because it's
showed
the
on.
island
Yeah.
you can see from Tokyo, so
Yeah.
it
And
looks
then
good.
on the other like end of the spectrum, that's incredibly like of the time in this film is like the jazz club, which is sort of riddled with American GIs, which are stationed
Yeah.
there.
I did catch that.
Yeah, so in 63, that might have been spillover from Vietnam because that's when Americans started sending advisors over.
Well,
Yeah,
the
well,
funny
and
thing is,
probably people still around from the US bases in Japan
Yeah.
and
Yokohama
Korea as well.
had a U.S. base in there for decades for sure.
You can still find that
Tar-
place in Roppongi or Naha, no question.
Tarantino
That
has
the
actually
the
said
club is
that
actually a set, actually.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm just saying that
Yeah,
a place exactly
that type
like
of
that.
sure,
I mean, they'll
sure,
probably be playing douchier
yeah.
music now, but yeah.
probably.
Tarantino has said that scene, that exact scene, is what inspired his swing dance scene in Pulp Fiction, which is what it
I, I,
reminded me of, really.
I just realized I was going to say something dumb.
Oh, okay.
I
Well,
was
good for
getting
for
Kill
content.
Bill and Lost in Translation mixed
Oh,
up in my head.
Well,
I
Like,
thought it was going to be
speaking of
Tarantino had directed Lost in Translation.
I thought it was
uh,
going to be something about Tarantino being mad that there are shoes in this movie or something, but other
yeah, his
you're
most hated Kurosawa
better
movie,
than
just
that.
constant shoes.
Go back to the samurai stuff where everyone's wearing sandals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, but speaking of filmmakers being inspired by this movie, Scorsese has talked about how that first section in that's just in the Gondo household is like the greatest use of widescreen in cinema history. And like I love how Kurosawa just composes his shots, especially in those scenes. So like his technique that he had sort of developed by this time was very long takes with two cameras simultaneously. And he does that so, for a lot of reasons, but one is so the actors don't know which camera is going to be used in the editing, like which take they're using, so that they're not playing the camera. And it also allows him to sort of set up frames within frames. So when there's like a pillar in the middle of the room, you have like one half of the frame is one frame and the other half is another. Or like a window creates a frame within a frame, and I think you see this most explicitly when the cops are waiting in the hospital to sort of like find the kidnapper, and you see the kidnapper through the window that they're looking at going up the steps. And you don't really see that technique in filmmaking anymore because there's just this language that we're so accustomed to of like master shot close up back to the master, then another close up, whereas Kurosawa is just letting everything play out and is basically editing in camera, and it takes somebody as skillful as Kurosawa to be able to actually pull that off consistently.
The
I wish
opening
more people would
scenes in
try.
the house,
Yeah,
there was the huge windows.
yeah,
Which when I was first watching the film, I was like, wow, like that must have been such an effort to film, in daylight and everything with big windows.
hmm
Why bother?
yeah,
And
it
then
was very
obviously
difficult. Yeah,
they became very thematically relevant later, so I understood why they were there. But at first, I was like, oh, that's a really interesting choice to
hmm
require such a difficult set.
yeah.
Well,
He there were two versions of that set. There was the one that was actually looking out at Yokohama when they would open the windows, and then they built another one for when it
For
was
the
night
closed curtain
outside or when
scenes.
the curtains were closed. Yeah, and then they built a
Uh,
miniature version of night Yokohama with like with lights and moving trades and stuff. Yeah, so
wow,
Wow.
that's amazing.
Holy
That
crap.
that yeah, I was thinking. I think it's right after they leave Dope Alley. So much later in the film, though, I was getting like Yoshiwara District Metropolis vibes, and building a set like that
mhm.
also sounds like it's like kind of. I do wonder if that was a direct thought on the from the filmmakers to actually do that a little bit and just add a little edge to their crime
Yeah.
drama.
I mean, it worked on the view from his house worked on me. Like I was like, I wish I lived there. I wish I
Yeah.
lived there. Like, when a film does that, and that doesn't always work on me, but it did here for sure. Um,
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, I watched this on my phone on a bus,
David
no.
Lynch is
uh,
crying.
but it did look. I wasn't aware any of it was
No.
miniatures or anything.
Mhm.
David Lynch isn't on our list somehow.
He
Unfortunately,
he's
that's
too
he should cry about
divisive to
that.
be on such a public opinion
Popular,
list.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, he should have everything should be on the list, and then none of it is. So the public's wrong.
Yeah, I
Anyway,
know, but yeah, we've got Avengers Endgame and Infinity War.
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
yeah,
they're
I think that's the function of a public list like this, where movies that I think the greatest example is Shawshank Redemption being number one, is that a movie that everyone agrees is good, but how many people will say that it's their favorite movie?
Hmm.
Whereas
it's
a movie that's incredibly daring, like Blue Velvet, um, it's got like a much lower reach, but a much higher hit rate for like life-changing viewing experiences.
Yeah, which is why
yeah.
I'm still annoyed at Matt for making me do this because I think there is no value in this kind of list.
Well, there's no value in the list, but is there value in the movies? That's the fun thing to pop in and
Hmm.
check out.
You should do the
Well,
sight and sound list next, where it's incredibly like esoteric, where Jean Dielman is number one, which is like a 3.5 hour movie about a French housewife.
That
oh,
sounds even
that one,
worse.
that
Yeah,
movie. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that is a very controversial. It shot to the number one of what the AFI list, right?
it's sight and
That's it.
sound.
It's like Belgian or something, right? From the 70s.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
just like a housewife mourning for 3 hours, just hanging out in the
Yeah, I
kitchen.
had I had a look at
I
other
want to
lists
watch
when
it.
I was choosing it. One, the idea is we also want the bad, and it's harder to find like a
yeah.
Mhm.
good bad list other than, you know, the ones I found IMDb. There's an official good list. There's not like an official bad list.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
but yeah, I was like, I looked at the Sight and Sound, and well, AFI is like that's all American, so that's kind of lame.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want
yeah,
it all to be American. Sight and Sound, yeah, like the
right.
esotericism's cool, but Luke
I
would
feel
have
like it's
strangled me eight
self-consciously
times by now if we
esoteric.
did that.
Yeah.
No, I would have just quit.
Yeah.
You and Mark would be doing this podcast without me, man. I'd be doing a different podcast where I just watch Godzilla films every week.
I mean, my what I've pitched for after we run down this list is just doing everything that's rated 6.9, but
It's not the worst
Nice.
idea.
that's probably a lot of things. That's probably like 700 movies or something. Um,
Oh,
this
something here that I found very striking was the kind of the Schindler's List thing of the one color shot. That I was like not
Yeah.
expecting that at all.
I was
Yeah.
like, what
So
is it freaked me out. I was like, what's going on?
yeah.
In my
So
notes, I said, did they choose the new Princess Peach?
So yeah, for listeners, in this movie, the cops put a pink dye in the cases they give to the kidnapper, so that if he burns them, pink smoke will will rise from the chimney. So they're like, oh, he's burning the cases. That's where we have to go. And my my dear friends John Krebs and Chris Funderburg started a podcast called The Pink Smoke that takes its title from this film.
Okay,
So yeah, that's that
cool.
among cinephiles, that is like a very iconic sequence, and it is probably the source for Spielberg doing it in Schindler's List with the pink dress.
Is it so did that exist in like every cut of the film?
Yes, yeah,
Apparently, in
it's
some,
his first use of color, Kurosawa.
yeah, apparently in some, there were some like TV versions of it where they made an error and had it in black and white because
They just
Oh yeah,
assumed the whole
they
film would have
just
been black
assumed
and
it was
white.
all black and white. Yeah, but no, it caught me so off guard that I completely forgot about the briefcase thing when I saw it. I
Did they
was
have
like,
to like manually colorize it?
yes.
Yeah, I assume that's what's going on.
And then I tangled my brain a bit because between viewing parts of this movie, I put on the first episode of season 2 of Mission Impossible, in which they are using like trying to scam the heroin people with like they're trying to make it look like bath salt, and it's like purple and pink bath salt. So I'm like, it's supposed to be
oh
I
heroin.
wow,
was
And
this is so interesting because it's quite an old film. Those techniques are quite like passe to us now.
Hmm.
So
well,
I assumed they wouldn't work. And then actually they
um,
do catch the villain using, like marked money essentially. Whereas
putrid
usually in a
smelling
film
money.
yeah,
these days, when they bring up something like that, you're like, oh, well, that's not going to be how they catch him because,
Yeah.
everyone knows
Well,
that.
yeah, well, in this one they have to, that they find the dead accomplices,
Mm.
and they then sort of have to like
That
engineer
spooks him into burning the.
yeah, a sting operation. Yeah. Yeah. Now, to me, what stops us from being a perfect movie is that the police inspector played by the legendary Nakadai, he's this one was made sort of at a time in Japan when there was several very high profile kidnapping cases that resulted in the deaths of small children.
Okay.
So it wasn't like it became a common crime, but just very high profile and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
disturbing sick cases. Um, so this fervor of trying to get the kidnapper was sort of in the contemporary culture, but Japanese police enjoy a much like broader range of ingrained power. So
Mm-hmm.
it's much easier for a Japanese police officer or a group of investigators to arrest somebody on a lesser charge and like interrogate them and then get them to confess to murder or something. And also it's much easier for them to arrest somebody on emergency protocols as opposed to having a warrant. So for the police to put like innocent bystanders at risk just to catch the kidnapper in attempted murder seems like a leap of logic that's not necessary.
But it's
And so
also
that
a,
whole
a big moral, like,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
I
that's
felt,
questionable, right? Like, their motive
mhm,
was we want him to hang.
yeah,
And to
yeah,
get
it
that, they were
was,
willing to, like, take a more dangerous route than just arresting the guy.
yeah,
But they do question if they
uh,
should be in the no parking zone or not.
yeah, yeah.
But
That
for a
is an
country where
egregious
you're
violation.
basically guilty until proven innocent,
Yes.
Japan loves stories about criminals like getting away with it. Maybe
Mhm.
because they're sort of projecting something or trying to cover something
well,
up.
Well, there was a thing
from,
last year at the guys running some kind of racket in the Philippines, and the Japanese press is, ooh, they're the One Piece bandits, but they were just like like kind of scummy criminals.
it depends on how long their journey take. Did it take 1,000 years? Um,
I-
no, but from what I read, it was that kidnappings actually rose after this film, and Kurosawa even got threats about his daughter after
Yeah.
this. But he said that what he wanted to put across with this film is he thought that kidnapping what do you call it, like penalties for kidnapping weren't harsh enough. So
Mhm.
you can kind of see that because a couple times they're like, well, he's only gonna get 15 years, so we have to let him kill this heroin lady, which, yeah, I felt really weird about that. It was like, but
Yeah,
this is war on drugs times, so
I don't think they were planning on him killing that other woman. They just wanted to get him attempting on their
yeah,
fake
yeah.
people, wasn't it?
I,
Right.
Yeah, because if they needed to connect him to the murdered
The other two murders, yeah.
yeah,
accomplices, and the only way to do that was to get him to do like another drug deal the same way that he did to rope in the
Yeah.
accomplices. But yeah, it is puzzling because so many of other like if you look at Kurosawa's Stray Dog, where he's so empathizes with the criminal element, or in Drunken Angel, where it takes place so much among like the lowest dregs of society, and it's all about how these people are human too, and they deserve our sympathy and our support. Whereas this one, the heroin addicts are used as like shock value and to like repel us, and one is murdered just to sort of move the plot along. Um, and so if it's critiquing policing at the time, or the way that Japanese society is looking at, those people, it seems a little muddled. But if I'm, as far as critiquing movies go, like that, there's not many things that you could really point to as flaws in this film. So I'm really sort of
Well, and
digging.
Japan's whole culture towards drugs is
Yeah,
Yeah. I
no
It was
mean,
ideal.
weird
So,
hearing the
Enter the
police
Void
talk
is
about it so nonchalantly, actually, living in Japan.
mhm.
But
yeah, it's at worst that's something you could chalk up to a product of its time, and
Mhm.
it might still be a product of
It would
this
still be
time
a product
too.
of this time, yeah.
Yeah.
if you are keeping track of my body horror ratio, the lady in Dope Alley flipped me out a little bit. How she was
Mm.
moving, just like she looked like she was about
Yeah.
to like contort backwards in 8 different ways. But hey, that's good acting,
Uh,
isn't it? That wasn't even a
Yeah.
special effect.
Yep.
Good acting from an extra or an almost extra.
I mean, I thought that the murderer, when he was dancing with the sunglasses, that was pretty weird. He was doing weird body movements. It was
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah, that's one thing I liked about this movie. I keep bringing up how I like Zodiac a lot. And one thing that
ask.
does, and this does, which Memories of a Murder didn't do, or Memories of Murder, whatever it was, didn't do so much, is kind of drifts from one lead character to the next one. I kind of like that, especially in a police movie, because in a crime case, it's always going to be like a different focus. That's why the show Law and Order is so popular, right? You get the law,
Mhm.
then you get the order. So here it kind of starts with Mifuni's executive, and then kind of drifts to where the detective at the head of the case is the lead, and then it kind of drifts to even where the murder is kind of the lead for the last
Mhm.
15 minutes or something.
What's interesting,
Yeah.
it did it in a way that I like, whereas
Mhm.
when we watched, what's the really, really old murderer movie we watched?
M.
M.
Oh yeah, I wanted to say Dial M for murder, but I knew that was wrong. Yeah, just M. That did it in a way that just felt unfocused to me.
Was gonna
Whereas
say it.
this, yeah,
Sorry, again.
it's has a momentum that makes it work.
It is very interesting that the first two films on the good list we did were like a Kurosawa film and M, and this feels
Like
kind of
Kurosawa's
almost
version of
like
M. Yeah.
Kurosawa doing M. Yeah. Um.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
do
I mean,
love M, but I've never really thought about this film that way.
My
it's
the
only in the context of we haven't had a whole lot of movies about kidnapping or murder.
But also,
And
it's a solitary crime, right? So it doesn't feel as disjointed. Whereas
mm,
M, he was like a wave of child murders.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you could move from character to character, and they didn't even have any relation to each other. Whereas here,
yeah,
everyone
and
is tied to this one fairly small case.
yeah, and High and Low, it's like, hey, I haven't seen that guy for a while, but I'm only
Yeah.
noticing just now.
Mhm.
and I
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
I love M, and I love Peter Lorre screaming at the end. But this is definitely a more subtle guy and subtle,
Yes.
deeper, more interesting Joker man in
Oh
this.
yeah,
Yeah. And
you can have just a small little, like even the police do, like, oh yeah, he's kind of right. It does look like he's looking down at us. Stuff like
Yeah,
that.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and
I'm
it's
trying.
interesting how like we're also sort of separated from the kidnapper, because when we start to follow him, he puts on these mirrored sunglasses. So he becomes like this blank slate that literally reflects everything that is pointed at him. So we're not really like emotionally engaging with him the way we do other characters, but we're still like forced to live in his shoes. And it's such a striking visual.
Yeah, but they're not Dick tracing it. I mean, because it's like the Joker, but the Joker, the whole point of the
Oh,
Joker, or what
I'm
Blockhead. I'm naming Dick Tracy villains wrong, I know, but the whole point is like, oh, the villain needs to Bond villains. They have to have some like crazy weird scar or something. Whereas this guy is very plain Jane. This guy, would now be serving you, clerking at the 7-Eleven.
Mhm.
Well, that
He does
is
have a
an
scar.
interesting choice. Like, I don't know, the old boy guy. He sort of just looks like a guy.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very effective to
But
have like Ernst Blofeld. You'll never
um,
get that image out of your mind, but or the Donald Pleasance
or
version at least. But
Seven,
like you've already supposed to have forgotten what this guy looks like.
yeah.
Unfortunately, everyone
I
remembers
mean,
what Spacey looks like, but
well, but the thing is that at the time, I remember watching Seven, and it kind of did blow my mind that he just looked like some schmuck.
Mm.
It was like he just looked like some regular schmuck, and then
like
he
Which
did
came
all that.
first out of Seven and Usual Suspects?
Seven was first. Usual
Okay.
Suspects
No,
was 2 years later. Seven's 95, I think, and Usual Suspects is 97. If my
That's weird. I think Seven would be after, but that's just how it. Seven makes you want to feel like it's after.
Hmm.
It's like,
Seven
no,
does
what's the
feel like it was
future,
made.
man?
No, when you see 95 on Seven, you're like, really? Maybe because you want to think
I
1997 because you're thinking of Seven, but
looks like they're the same year,
oh,
actually.
are they really? Okay.
Oh,
Yeah. What I was wondering is L.A. Confidential, because to me, L.A. Confidential is kind of the best of those noir 90s noir movies, and it's kind of the one that nobody thinks about anymore. And that was 2 years after, that was 97. So maybe that's why it's better. It came out later. That
Okay.
was the future. Anyway,
Future movies are always better than
if
past movies.
that
That's why
is
High and
this
Low is a terrible movie.
LA Confidential does not try to blow your mind in the way that Seven and Usual Suspects do, and that's part
yeah.
of why I like it better.
I think
Like,
yeah, I think LA Confidential is a masterpiece, but I think Seven is as well. But I do think Seven, like The Exorcist, suffers in subsequent years because so many movies ripped it off
hmm.
that go
yeah,
that the original. But I think Seven definitely retains that, whereas not many movies have tried to like do neo noir the way that's did, especially as a period movie.
Again, that's probably why I'm such a big fan of Zodiac. I feel like it kind of takes that template and refines it to be something much
Yeah,
better.
yeah,
yeah.
Well, we're at the point of talking about everything but this film.
yeah.
So,
Um,
does anyone dare call a Kurosawa anything but a film?
Yeah,
it's a
This guy is
film.
film. Like,
yeah.
Yeah,
I
it
will
is
say,
just straight over good.
obviously, I would love it if we had more of his samurai films on the list.
Mm-hmm.
But also, the reason I still do this podcast, other than just chatting to you guys and having fun, is it forces me to watch films I wouldn't have watched. Whereas I'm gonna watch all his samurai films. That's not an issue for me. But a lot of the other films on this list I probably wouldn't have watched without this podcast. And yeah, I probably wouldn't have got around to watching this one, but I'm glad I did.
I
Like
wouldn't have gotten around to watching this one.
I wouldn't have
I
assumed there was as much cultural commentary. I would have thought it was more of a dry police thing.
Hmm.
I
You
didn't
know,
know.
like when
I didn't know he made
it's
films that weren't samurai films until we started watching these.
Until we
like
watched
that's
Kikiru, neither did I.
Yeah,
like
like what the hell?
that's the thing, in the popular culture, Akira Kurosawa isn't really thought of like as a political filmmaker, but he before World War II he was a Marxist, and even though he wouldn't be classified that like after the war, I think he kept those like political instincts in so many of his other movies, and I think that's why there's this, you know, like morality that runs through almost all of his movies, especially these like modern ones. And I think that, there's these themes of like nature versus nurture. Like, what is it about this guy that drove him to kidnapping, where he's, crowded amongst millions of other Japanese people who have the same view that he does, but he's the one that's willing to murder and kidnap to sort of like get revenge on this one guy. And he would like Kurosawa would like address that, theme and concept in other films like Stray Dog and Drunken Angel. But it just makes his films so much deeper than, crime capers or samurai dramas, that he's able to like be very incisive about the culture that he comes from and that he's commenting on.
Well, even the samurai dramas, like there's a long tradition of Japanese art where you set it in a historical period to get away with criticizing the current
Oh,
government.
sure. Yeah.
And there's a lot of class awareness in those films too.
Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
like, um, something like Yojimbo, I think that's probably the closest he got to like a fun action movie
Yeah.
because there's not really like a overriding moral lesson to take other than like gangsters and samurai are kind of assholes.
Don't screw with Mifune.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the lesson that we can
Um,
take away from for sure.
like one of the most influential things that ever came out of a Kurosawa film was the blood mechanism malfunctioning in Sanjuro because like that blood
Just
spurt was not supposed to happen. And that
oh
just
yeah.
led to everything great that ever it's like
Yeah.
that led to just everything.
I was thinking
Um
watching this even High and Low though. Is there any actor that really did angry, simmering anger better than Mifune?
I don't know.
Nobody.
He's one of my favorite actors of all time. I'm like, I'll just put it out
Absolutely.
there, dude.
For
He's
sure.
absolutely amazing in
I guess
this.
just watching last night, it's like I guess that's his real ace in the hole. He's just the angriest man on screen.
Yeah.
I mean, he was offered the role of Darth Vader, and I wish he had taken it. I mean,
Yeah,
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
oh, sorry. Okay, well, that would have been good
that'd
too.
work too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
why not?
Although they obviously that went well okay in the end.
Yeah. But
I
Knock
Oh,
It
so what
I
you're
think
saying
is
is that Alec Guinness once again played a role that should have been played by an Asian man.
That's the real theme of this podcast.
right.
Um,
Well, how much do we
Alec
really know
Guinness.
about Tatooine?
I think you'll
Man.
find that Obi-Wan is from Stu John.
Okay. Well, I feel like a stew John for not knowing that.
So
It's literally a planet named after Jon Stewart because Jon Stewart asked George Lucas where is Obi-Wan from, and he's like, you know what, mate, he's from Stu John. Because
Oh,
George Lucas says it has to be canon.
yeah, yeah. Well, at least before
well,
he
we
sold
got
it.
yeah, Seven Samurai is on the list. My favorite samurai film, Harakiri, which was not a Kurosawa film, is on the list.
ooh,
And
nice.
you seen that? Yeah,
That's so good.
yeah,
That's
that
a
is
Luke, have
movie.
you seen that?
brutal.
No, I'm looking for I because it's on the list.
Oof.
I deliberately haven't.
Okay.
Brutal.
I've
That's
been
a
looking
movie
forward
that
to it
it
because I just recently learned about the one of the Lord who it's the real life Lord who is his
mm.
Lord in that film.
Oh, interesting.
Harakiri is a movie where it's like it blows up the very concept of a samurai movie. Like it
Yeah.
feels like you should never make a samurai movie after that one. It's so good. It's
Yeah.
so anyway.
It was I mean that one shot from it was ripped off directly for Taxi Driver. As good as Taxi Driver is, it
Mhm.
just totally just took that. I'm not going to say what it is because
And
that
then
might
Taxi
spoil.
Driver was ripped off for Joker, and we're back full circle to the
Yeah.
start of this
Yeah.
podcast.
And
But yeah, Harakiri has one of the best Nakadai performances and very about as far away removed from him as a detective in this one as you can get. So I'm looking forward to you guys tackling that one. Awesome.
that
Anyway,
is
the
a
the
ways.
best bad review I could find is actually a 4 on
Mhm.
this one. There are no ones. There's a
Oh,
3, but they clearly were not. They clicked the wrong number.
we're not going to have ones anymore after a while, I guess. Okay, go
Maybe,
ahead.
but it's not if it's a
Well, I mean, these
classy
ones are
film.
a little more. There's not such a wide range of going out their way to watch this. Right?
People aren't
Yeah.
That's
popcorn
a good
movieing
point.
this, like randomly.
Yeah, I mean, Shawshank Redemption has to have some ones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, these
Yeah,
people have beer
people
in it
just
actually.
review bombing movies like on the top
Yeah, I
100.
don't like this number. 128 one stars for Shawshank Redemption.
Okay. Well, this is a 4 out of 10, so they don't hate
Okay,
it, but
go for
the
it.
title is Stock Up on Beer. Uh Kurosawa is one of my favorite directors, but some of his movies, although highly rated, are extremely boring. For example, Ron. I barely sat through the movie. Sure, it's a masterpiece, influential, yada, 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 but boy, is it boring. Same goes for High and Low. Sure, one could say it's an old movie, but old doesn't necessarily equals boring. Fritz Lang's M is much older and way more fun to watch, which I think
Huh.
we already disagreed with. But hey, everyone gets an opinion. High and Low is very well filmed and extremely well acted, like all of Kurosawa's movies, but boy, is it slow and boring. The pacing is one of its weakest components. I think if an hour would have been trimmed of this movie, it would have helped. Anyway, worth the watch, but stock up on beer. It'll help. 14 out of 24 found it helpful. So, yeah,
I
I mean, that
think
is a real
almost any
4.
film I would agree that an hour sliced off would benefit the film.
Yeah,
Not
I
some of the
wouldn't be
Disneys I've
mad.
watched.
But this
I
one, I think it's slow in a way that makes sense because it's about
Mhm.
characters waiting for something that's taking like that's what it's about. It's
Yeah, this
people having
didn't.
to wait a long time.
Yeah, the
It
worst moment was
didn't.
when I started and it just said 2 hours 23 minutes. I was like,
Uh-huh.
and but
Yeah, I
then
had a
I
bit of
got
that
through it
too,
and
and
it
by
was
the end,
fine.
I was like, "Oh, it's done."
That's same
Yeah.
trajectory here.
I forgot to do this at the beginning, but I wanted to read a couple of taglines.
Hmm.
142 screenful minutes of thrills and suspense. And the international
Fills the screen,
tagline,
all right.
this one's great. From success to bankruptcy by ransoming another man's son.
Okay. Oh, speaking of,
Kind of
while we're
spoilers.
well, it's like 40 minutes in the movie. Spoiler. There's still another 2 hours.
It's the
But it doesn't,
first moral quandary of the film.
But
it's weird that it's structured because it's not like the person who ransomed didn't go from success to bankruptcy.
Oh yeah, that's true.
okay.
You don't
Japan
say that
doesn't
he
care about
ransomed him.
spoilers though.
Oh, I guess ransoming could mean
Mm.
paying the ransom. Okay.
The Japanese title of the Pixar movie Up is something like Old Man Carl and a boy fly up into the sky, or Old Man Carl flies his house into the sky. Like the title's like
Yeah, it's
overly
like Oji-san's
descriptive.
flying house, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Oh yeah,
I think
Coco's called "Remember Me."
I do. I think I'm going against everybody else where I do think that I'd rather this be called Heaven and Hell, but
No, I
I
would
mean,
be cool with
Heaven and
that.
Hell is a cool name. It's just I
Yeah.
liked the sort of
It does sound better as
multi-meaning of this
Tengaku
one.
no Jigoku though. You
I
know, you gotta
yeah,
split it out in
but
Japanese.
also now that I know what high and low is, I think maybe I feel better about the name high and low because I didn't know. I don't know. I expected something else, but
Yeah,
it's
I
cool
mean, as
because
a
I expected something else even halfway through the movie. It's like after an hour they got the kid back. I was like, what's going on?
But
So,
I also as many meanings as High and Low does have, I think Heaven and Hell is a very Kurosawa title.
Mhm.
Because in so many of his movies he has this like enlightenment through suffering motif. And so, Gondo has to go through losing everything to regain his humanity. And so we get a little bit of that as when he's like finally able to use his hands again to make that case. And it's only through losing his fortune and having to start all over again that he discovers like who he is. And so I think going through hell to get through heaven is sort of like in Kurosawa's bag.
yeah, and also I think this would make a really good double feature with Parasite.
Oh sure.
Which we'll be watching. That Parasite I haven't watched
long
yet
time.
because it's on our list.
Yeah.
It's an interesting mirror with this, I would
Okay.
say.
Then I will.
We'll
I already
talk
know
about
that
it.
everyone's going to hate me because I'm going to be like, yeah, it's good, but I liked him. I like the host better.
You know, I think I like Snowpiercer better than Parasite, so and I think
Me
maybe
too.
those two.
Me too.
Yeah,
I haven't
yeah.
seen either.
Well, Wait, you've seen
seen
Snowpiercer? You did
Snowpiercer?
it for the
Oh,
podcast.
Snowpiercer. I thought you said I was hearing the host. Okay.
Yeah, it's weird when genre directors win Oscars, it's always like my fifth favorite movie from them. Like
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love oh shit. I love Shape of Water, but yeah, it's certainly
Yeah,
not my favorite Del
exactly.
Toro.
Exactly. Yeah, but I mean, that
Same thing
was
with Parasite.
I, it's the Oscars, but it's so much about how what was it? Miyazaki won his second Oscar for
Didn't
like
even
his
show
30th
up.
film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the boy in the
There's
hair.
like
Baller
Yeah.
move.
King.
but the Spider-Verse, the Spider-Verse, the kid who played Miles Morales like posted something kind of petulant on Twitter and then he said, "Sorry, I didn't mean it." But it's like, dude,
Yeah,
Oscars
we do that.
are but the thing is, Oscars are always just like, actually, we're just going to give this guy a Lifetime Achievement Award. And that just
Yeah.
happens over and over and over and
Yeah.
over and over.
Yeah.
But
Godzilla
like
got
when it was happening, Anna was like watching the live streams live and getting drunk and screaming at it. And she called me and Mercy and she's like, "Aren't you watching the Oscars?" I'm like, "No, I don't respect the Academy."
Yeah.
And she's,
yeah, I
"Aren't,
didn't watch
aren't
it
you
either.
happy that Christopher Nolan's winning?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, they finally recognized a white man."
But
I was
as far as
playing
Oscars
Sekiro most
go,
of my
I
phone.
think I think Oppenheimer winning a bunch of awards. I like that movie a lot. Wasn't
It's not
my
even out
favorite.
here yet. It
It's
comes out in like a week or two.
it's not
Oh,
my
the
favorite
movie
Nolan movie
about
either.
the atomic bomb isn't out in Japan.
I think my theory is they deliberately left it to after the Oscars, so they can be like, "No, look, it's taking the subject seriously. It's an Oscar movie."
Yeah.
It does. I mean, the thing is,
The
after seeing it, I'm
Barbenheimer
like,
thing really hurt them, though.
I totally understand that, and I haven't I haven't seen Barbie yet for no real reason.
Oh, I've seen Barbie, but not Oppenheimer. So
I'm gonna see Barbie soon. It's just I don't, because we have 2 podcasts where we watch things every week. I don't watch anything else anymore, really. But yeah, Oppenheimer was respectful. I mean, it treated it like the guy is a very flawed person who did a bad thing,
absolutely.
which is the only way you can do that, which is part of why it's what I think is one of the only good biopics. Because it doesn't suck
jerk the guy
job.
off. Yeah,
It's not a suck job. Yeah, exactly. It's like Ed Wood, because you can't really depict Ed Wood as being like a perfect, wonderful person.
my problem with the Oscars was that Godzilla was only nominated for best special effects and not best picture.
I agree. It should have been best picture. Yeah, that's the thing.
It won the Japanese Academy Award at least.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite movies of the year. Absolutely.
Oh god,
yeah.
I watched it 3 times in the theater and cried all 3 times, and I haven't even seen it in English yet.
Dude, I don't know if it isn't. Oh, you haven't
No,
seen
I mean, I literally haven't seen it with subtitles yet. I watched it in my shitty chat.
But that's just exactly the same thing as like they gave it an effects award because that's like you did a good job, but we can't give you best picture because we're giving best picture to something Oppenheimer. We're giving best picture to the guy who caused Godzilla to happen.
Would have been nice to be nominated though.
I mean, no, I love that Godzilla that movie won. It's fantastic, but it deserved to at least get nominated.
I guess that does make more sense than a double feature.
I think it's a better I think it is more of a great movie than it is a great effects showcase.
I think it does deserve to be recognized for effects though, because it pulled them off at a very low budget.
Yeah.
Because the director knew what he was doing. Rather than just saying, oh, we'll do everything in post and not filming it in a way that made sense for effects.
For sure, we could probably pull a lot of Marvel movies that look like shit that won best effects because they spent the most money in effects. You know what I mean?
Best green screen.
I actually think Oppenheimer should have won best effects and Godzilla should have won best picture. But Oppenheimer wasn't considered for effects because it didn't use CG.
Yeah.
The irony of the post-Tron world.
God, that's insane.
But they blew up that thing real good.
Yeah, I'll agree with you 100%, Luke. That Oppenheimer looked better, Godzilla better movie. So to fuck you, Oscars.
Yeah.
Signed
in the words of Joseph Ayres, fuck the Oscars.
But I mean, even people who won awards that like there's no world where both Lily Gladstone and Emma Stone like don't deserve a Best Actress Oscar. Like Lily Gladstone deserves one, Emma Stone deserves one. There's like lifetime performances, and the fact that they happen in the same year is just a real tragedy. So, like, give them both an award. Like, give me a break.
Well, that's the one Anna was really pissed about.
We'll give Gladstone
second.
One for a crappier movie later, right? There's always the Oscar. It's like, well, we know it's not their best performance, but
like the Gladiator Oscar.
Yeah.
Well, Al Pacino winning his Oscar for Scent of a Woman, like ridiculous.
I think the Razzies are just a mirror image, like as much bullshit as the Oscars are. But at least the Razzies does invent categories, which is what the Oscars should be doing. You know what I mean? Like they should just give.
It's crying they're still not a stunt Oscar.
Yeah,
that is ridiculous. Yeah, because more people have died doing stunts than almost anything else. Film industry
in a movie, yeah. Okay.
I mean, naturally,
and they've died. And sometimes the death take makes it into the film.
Yeah, and oftentimes it's because the director is not taking safety into account. John Landis.
Well, fucking
they should give him an Oscar.
We were watching Back to the Future 2 last week, and at that scene, I was like, "Oh no!" Which is the crashing into the clock tower glass. If no one, I mean, I assume you guys do, but maybe the listener doesn't know.
I actually don't know. What are you talking about, Matt?
Back to the Future 2, the stunt woman, and when the hover bikes go through the courtyard. One of those stunt ladies was like permanently disabled from that.
Oh shit! I don't think that came up when we did because we did it with the guy who did the.
Oh, we had a fun time. Yeah, we were going fun time for that. Okay.
Well, I do respect that in stunt person culture that it's like even if you get horribly wounded, the take goes in the film, and that's what people generally want because they're like, dude, I
don't want to get those injuries and you don't even use the take.
Yeah, I understand. But also, kind of sucks for everybody else. I guess if you
Yeah,
have to think about it.
Paul W.S. Anderson, whatever his name is, the bad one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
WS.
cost a stunt woman her arm because he changed
Oh
speeds
God.
without proper preparations.
Ugh.
Yeah,
Yeah. What the
you don't want to
hell?
feel responsible for that.
Well, he didn't. He tried to get out of paying her any compensation.
Just as Gondo didn't want to feel
Responsible for bad shoes.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd find a
I
nice
mean,
awkward way to tie
well,
it back to High and Low eventually.
I mean, he didn't want to be responsible for paying the ransom for his chauffeur's kid. I mean, we didn't really talk about that at all. Like, have any of you worked as sort of like the help for rich people before in any
Um,
capacity?
Personally, no.
No.
But Dom, who we had on back when we did Tenet in a previous podcast, he was an English teacher in Russia, and he would work for like full-on oligarchs. And
Yeah.
they would just like at the drop of a hat be like, "Oh, we're going for 2 weeks in the Caribbean or whatever on our boat. You can come too," and stuff like that. It's like, "Oh, we don't want to
Yeah.
miss English lessons, so you can just come."
I have done that in some capacity times, and it's very weird. One time, this family that I was working for invited me to Thanksgiving, and no one spoke a word the entire Thanksgiving dinner. You know what that's like? That's
Wow.
weird, especially for me.
Yeah.
But no, but I could definitely feel the tension of being, being possibly having your employer pay a ransom that you never could possibly afford to
Mhm.
save your kid when they don't really want to. So I was like, oh God. There was one point when they went off to do detective work, and I was like, oh God, did he like go and kill? Did he kill both of them? Did he like flip out? Because man, that is uncomfortable. Because you don't want to like, I don't know. You probably wouldn't want to work for the guy for forever
Mhm.
because it would just be
Yeah.
uncomfortable forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think especially in Japanese culture, like the chauffeur is just riddled with guilt the entire time, even as he's begging. You know, he gets to the point where he
Yeah.
breaks down and he
Yeah.
begs Gondo to save his son, and Gondo's like, "Rah, rah, rah, rah." And I, Gondo's the kind of person who would never beg for anything. So just to see that really well played with actors.
Yeah, I love that we get one little crumb about Gondo being rich only because of his wife's dowry.
Hmm.
Like too proud to admit that, and too proud to do this and do that. And
Yeah.
like, thankfully, he does the right thing because I was like, oh God, please don't.
Yeah, I thought he wasn't for a minute there.
I mean,
But that's
Kurosawa will go down those roads too in other
Yeah.
films. So,
but that's why this is a great film, is because I didn't know what was going to happen, and I was
like you
afraid of
say,
what was going to happen.
Nice.
kids rescued halfway through, and yeah, it's just it's the unlike the 4-star review, I would say the pacing's not too bad, but the normal plot structure is definitely different.
The one thing I maybe they basically we knew they had the guy caught for the last 20 minutes. I don't usually like that in like a police or crime drama. I remember, have any of you guys read the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series of books?
No.
Yeah.
In the third book, they've basically already won at the start of the book, and then the whole book is just the characters smugly preparing to bring down the big bad guy. And I think there's like a little twist at the end and someone dies or whatever. But like the book felt completely devoid of tension because you spend the
Yeah,
entire book knowing they have to get down and they're just like preparing to do it.
that's a
And
bummer.
that's something that I every now and then something gets into that sort of territory and I'm like, just keep us guessing a little bit longer. Act like you kind of know who he is, but he's one step ahead of you or whatever. But
I
yeah, I
mean,
mean, this is a 2 hour, 40 minutes film, and 10 minutes of it being not as tense as I would have liked is hardly a damning indictment.
And I thought it was a pretty good chaser pursuing
Yeah.
sequence for 63 for sure. Like
Oh yeah.
definitely nice and taut,
And there was
even
a
if
brief
the
moment where the
dramatic
kid was
tension.
missing, right? And I thought like, oh, he's got him.
It's
yeah.
like, oh no, there he is.
Like, you got kidnapped again. What the hell, Shinichi?
That was the first
Um,
thing with June too. Where's June? Then June walks in. Oh, there he is.
but I mean, the movie did. I mean, it did that deliberately, and then just was like, "Oh no,
Yeah, it just
gotcha."
was
And
a
then there's
weirdly
corpses.
humorous.
It was great. Yeah, it was.
Heron corpses, yes.
I thought kind of the funniest thing was just seeing Gondo mowing his own lawn in like a silk shirt that was completely soaked with sweat.
Yeah. Yeah, like
Hey,
he's
Japanese summer, man.
Yeah.
Like he's
I
in
mean
this
that
like masochistic moment where he has to like suffer in the heat the way that everybody else is. Like what
Mm.
where while
yeah.
the kid is missing, so he's gonna mow his lawn.
Yeah, but I love that because he
Yeah,
just sent his chauffeur off to do police work, which is
yeah.
not a good idea usually, but I guess it worked out. Um,
He had faith
but
in him.
yeah, but I have faith in this movie. It was great.
Um,
Awesome.
I guess we will close this one out. So, John, what's up in your universe if you want to go for the plug?
Yeah, so I co-host a podcast with my friend Scott called Popcorn Eschaton, where we look at spiritualism and leftism in movies, either movies that are explicitly spiritual, like say The Last Temptation of Christ, or we sort of read into it, like the 36 Chambers. Um, and the most recent podcast release I did a commentary for the 13th Warrior for the Pink Smoke podcast with my friend Martin Kessler. That was a lot of fun, and we enjoyed that movie quite a bit. So check those out.
What a weird direct connection to
Nice.
this movie. Yeah.
The one thing I forgot to bring up is that this film is being remade by Spike Lee starring Denzel Washington.
I did
And
see that. Yeah.
I think they
Oh,
can do it. We'll
That
see.
they
that
just
sounds
remade
reasonable.
they remade Ikiru like right after we did that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's I think it has a 7.2 in IMDb, so that's not bad.
I actually
With
liked
Bill
Living.
Nye.
I thought that was good.
All right.
Bill Nighy,
Yep.
very
Yeah.
nice.
As for this one, we're Films and Filth. You can throw us a dime on Patreon at Podcastios, where we also, Mark and I talk about Space 1999 on Podcast 1999. I think everyone here has been on Time Enough Podcast, where we talk about the Twilight Zone and beyond.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
Luke likes talking Pokemon, and Luke loves Pokemon. Luke loves talking Pokemon. Excuse me, I got that wrong. Zelda and Hyrule Field Report, and gamers gaming each other on the Game Show. Gamey.
Yes, indeed.
Yep.
Yes.
And
Uh,
and I guess if you have to choose between living in a house on the hill and living in a shack staring at the house on the hill, just don't kidnap a kid.
and don't listen to that Ed Sheeran song.
Ed
Okay.
Sheeran rode in
What?
my friend's taxi.
Oh, interesting.
My friend tells the story as like he got there and Ed Sheeran was like, "Hey man, thanks for being cool. You didn't bother me, like you didn't treat me weirdly." And my friend was like, "I didn't know it was Ed Sheeran until I got there because I absolutely would have treated him weirdly."
My funny Ed Sheeran story is that everyone was talking about how Ed Sheeran was on Game of Thrones,
Mm.
and I thought Sheeran was the name of a character in those books. I didn't know that Ed
Jon Snow and Ed
singer.
Sheeran, yeah.
I didn't. Yeah, sounds like a Game of Thrones character. So, well,
Well, I
and
thought it was
there's
weird when he showed up in Yesterday, which is already a weird movie anyway. So
he seems nice. I'm not super into his
no,
stuff.
I
He
got
seems
a
okay,
beef. I
nice.
got a beef with him.
no, I don't have
I
a
liked his song he did for The Hobbit.
I don't have a beef with him. I just don't like his music. I did play a guitar, the Sheeran guitar at the music store. It was nice, but it's tiny
The
because
other
I
one
guess
by
he's
the
a tiny
KFC in
man.
Nagano.
It's near that, yeah.
Yeah, I always see that one.
They had the Equals guitar, and when I was trying tiny ones, I tried. It was nice. I don't want to have an Ed Sheeran guitar. That's
Mm.
really expensive.
I mean, you don't want a guitar with somebody's name on it,
No.
like just in general,
Well,
unless it's your own name, I guess.
I had one I was tossing around for a while, but it was also not expensive.
I,
So
I'd play a guitar that had like Megatron's name on it or something.
Hell yeah.
looks like Megatron. Yeah, sure, why not?
Just has
Transforms into a
Megatron. Yeah,
robot.
hell yeah. Yeah, it's just he transformed into a robot and all the strings are like dun 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 dun.
In Transformers animated, Laserbeak is a guitar that Soundwave plays.
Wow. Oh damn. I need to watch more of that. I watched like the first arc when it came out and then forgot about it.
And now you're doing all these stupid podcasts.
Yeah, now I can't watch it because I'm doing all these podcasts.
Okay, I'm gonna
Taking
hit.
your attention away from Cybertron.
Well,
Unacceptable.
I've watched about like a third of the Dune chapter 1 just in between other things. So I'm like finally watching that in
I'm
hopes
gonna
of seeing the
watch.
second one.
Yeah, I'm gonna rewatch the first one this weekend and see the second one next weekend.
They're pretty good.
Oh,
70
yeah.
millimeters can be mine. I have 70 millimeters.
Oh, I don't
if
think I can do it that way.
Mm.
Maybe Luke can. He'll be in Tokyo, maybe.
Yeah, I'm probably watching Tokyo, so maybe.
Cool.
Okay, I'm gonna hit the record.